people who are a little bit confused. I just want to mention that.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm so glad there's people here from all over. The program
Mhm.
originated in St. Louis, and that's why it's Central Time.
Okay.
Yeah, so if whatever time it is where you are, it's good. It's almost time for us to begin and to learn and to share. So I think I'm gonna let a few more people in that are waiting.
How many people you have? I'm just curious.
Sure, it looks right now there's 46
Oh,
people.
great.
Yeah. So I'm gonna ask everyone to, if you can put what do you call mute on, so that there will be time that you can put questions in the chat throughout Rabbi Funnye's talk, and I'm gonna do my best as a moderator to read the questions when it's time, and Rabbi Funnye will do the best he can to address them all. And so we're going to begin. I'm kind of going to be a little, as I introduce Rabbi Funnye, I'm going to also be looking up and trying to let people in at the same time, but I think we've all gotten used to being multitaskers in this age, and I hope everyone's doing well. It's a challenging time. Definitely feels more hopeful now than it has in quite a while, but still really keeping everybody in my prayers. So I want to first of all say Bruchim Habaim, welcome to everyone that is here. You're all a blessing, and I want to welcome folks. My name is Rabbi Randy Fleischer. I'm one of the rabbis at Central Reformed Congregation here in St. Louis, and so I want to welcome all the folks from our community, CRC in St. Louis, folks from the Jews of Color kind of community in St. Louis as well. CRC has a racial justice chavara that is also attending. And then I also want to welcome members of Rabbi Funnye's community, Beth Shalom B'nai Zakein. I know that Rabbi Funnye extended an invitation to members of his congregation, and there's people here from many places, as we've heard. So I'm just glad that we're all here together. Amazing that this technology allows us to bring all of you on, and Rabbi Funnye here from Chicago, because as Rabbi and I were talking before we started, Rabbi Funnye's last trip for a speaking engagement actually was to St. Louis, and it was just late February of 2020, a whole different universe. It feels like a whole different era before the pandemic had really taken hold and the lockdown. And Rabbi Funnye had some wonderful speaking engagements in St. Louis, and now, of course, he's there and where we are. And I want to welcome him to this we call University Series. This in April we've had guest speakers, and Rabbi Funnye, you have the distinction of this is our closing session of these wonderful guest speakers we've had. And so I'm going to do an introduction. Rabbi Capers Funnye is the spiritual leader of Beth Shalom B'nai Zaken Ethiopian Hebrew congregation, a 200-member merger of several former congregations located in the Marquette Park area of Chicago. Besides African Americans, the diverse congregation, Jews for Generations and New Converts, includes Jews originally from Mexico and other Latin American generations and new converts. Really Jews from all over. I love this part of Rabbi Funnye's bio that he describes his congregation as a composite of what someday the entire Jewish world will look like. And all I can say to that is, may it be so. Halavai. Halavai. And I want to say on a personal note that Rabbi Funnye, I've known Rabbi Funnye for a number of decades. I first met Rabbi Funnye in Chicago at a conference put on by the Jewish Council of Urban Affairs. Rabbi Funnye's been to our synagogue, CRC, twice. Once when we had Josh Nelson come along with Ephraim Isaac, and Rabbi Funnye spoke, and then again for a Dr. King program that we have with our joint venture. And both times it was a dynamic visit, and friendly and loving and interesting and empowering. So we really appreciate that. And the last thing I'll say is that in the spring of 2019, just 2 years ago, I had the privilege of bringing 8th graders who are now 10th graders from our synagogue to Chicago for a weekend in Chicago. And we spent Shabbat morning at Rabbi Funnye's congregation. And it was a really enlightening, amazing, spiritual experience. There was a bat mitzvah happening at the shul. We had a number of youngsters in our group who were biracial and Jews of color, and everybody loved being there. And I just want to really quickly, for the people who've never been to Rabbi Funnye's congregation, show just a few of the pictures I took that morning, and then I'm going to turn things over to Rabbi Funnye. So hold on one second. There we go. And that's the whole, okay, here we go. So it was a bat mitzvah, as I said. There's Rabbi Funnye. Rabbi Funnye, what was the young woman's name who became bat mitzvah?
That is Rachel.
Beautiful.
That's Rachel.
She did an amazing job.
Yes, Rachel Greer.
And I particularly like the drums, Rabbi Funnye. I'm a big drum fan, and wonderful drumming was happening.
And that's my grandson on the drums.
Yasher Koach, Yasher Koach. And this is a passing the Torah, L'dor Vador.
Yes.
Generation to generation. A ritual, a tradition that we share, that we do at CRC for our B'nai Mitzvot as well. Just a couple of more, and then we'll, and looks like maybe Birkat HaKohanim.
Yes.
Yes. And then finally, that's not the one. There was one more I wanted to show, but I'm not sure I can get to it. Well, there we go. This was amazing, Rabbi Funnye, which was when you spoke to the young woman who was becoming bat mitzvah. You not only spoke to her, but I believe you sang to her.
Yeah.
And you sang a message to her. And it was incredibly moving and inspirational. And I thank you, everyone, for your indulgence, for me sharing those photos of Rabbi Funnye's wonderful synagogue. And I'm going to take myself off of spotlight. And if everybody's ready, and if Rabbi Funnye is ready, I am honored and proud to introduce Rabbi Capers Funnye.
Rabbi Randy, I want to thank you so very much. And I want to say shalom u'barakah, peace and blessings to everyone joining us this evening. And I would like to thank my dear friends, Rabbi Susan Talvey and Rabbi Randy, for the invitation to teach on the subject that is very near and dear to my heart, the history of the Black Jewish movement in the United States of America, 1918 to the present. If time permits, I also want to touch on some of the communities that the International Israelite Board of Rabbis works with on the continent of Africa. Particularly, I want to talk about the community in Uganda, and to touch on the community in Nigeria. The majority of my lecture will focus on the men of our movement. But I want to begin by saying that the women in our movement and our communities have been, for the most part, the backbone of our movement from its very inception. So I would like to state their names for the public record. Rabbi Ford's wife was Lorraine Enos. Florence Matthew, the wife of Chief Rabbi Wentworth A. Matthew. Rabbinite Deborah Levy, the wife of Chief Rabbi Levi ben Levi. And of course, my wife, can't forget her, Rabbi Miriam Funnye, and so many other women who labored and sacrificed for our community. My love and respect goes out for their contributions to us. And of course, there are many other leaders of our community that are not the focus of my lecture. I think somebody's not muted.
Somebody has to mute.
And of course, there are many other leaders of our community that are not the focus of my lecture this evening. However, if I may make mention of some of them, Rabbi Yehoshua Yohanatan and his wife, Rabbinit Leah Yohanatan, of blessed memory, both of them are. She actually was a professor in the Israelite Academy and taught many of the rabbis that are now serving in the community. Rabbi Yirmiyahu Yisrael, the spiritual leader of B'nai Adat, Rabbi K.Z. Yeshurun. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention another rabbi from New York who was also my teacher, Rabbi Helu Paris, who also hailed from Ethiopia. He was born in Ethiopia. And of course, in Chicago, the rabbis that preceded me in the pulpit of Beth Shalom Ben Nezakin Ethiopian Hebrew Congregation, Senior Rabbi Abahu Ben Ruben, Rabbi David Lazarus, Rabbi Lewis Green, and Rabbi Kano Stifson. I pray that all of their memories be for a blessing and that their souls be continue to be bound up in the bonds of life with the eternal one of Yisrael, Adonai Hashem. Another point that I want to draw your attention to is the fact that the Ruach HaKodesh was moving throughout the African world and America starting in 1918. And even as early as 1896, with the movement that was started by Prophet William Saunders Crowdy. Our synagogue, Beth Shalom Ben Nezakin Ethiopian Hebrew Congregation, started out as the Congregation of Ethiopian Hebrews in 1918. And at that same time, this is before Instagram, before Facebook, before WhatsApp, or before cell phones. This movement or this spirit was moving in amongst African people throughout the diaspora and on the continent of Africa itself. So Hashem was absolutely in the plan. Chief Rabbi Wentworth Arthur Matthews started Commandment Keepers Congregation in 1919. So with this being said, I'll move forward with my presentation, and I want to start with Rabbi Arnold Yeshaya Ford. Rabbi Ford was born the 23rd of April, 1877, and he passed on the 16th of September in 1935. He was a rabbi, Black nationalist, and immigrationist. He was born in Bridgetown, Barbados, the son of Edward Ford and Elizabeth Birthright. Rabbi Ford asserted that his father's ancestry could be traced to the Yoruba tribe of Nigeria and his mother's to the Mindi tribe of Sierra Leone. According to his family's oral history, their heritage extended back to one of the priestly families of the ancient Israelites. And in Barbados, his family maintained customs and traditions which identified them with Judaism. His father was a policeman who also had a reputation as a fiery preacher. He preached at the Wesleyan Methodist Church. where Arnold was baptized, yet it is not known whether Edwards' teaching espoused traditional Methodist beliefs or did it embody the radical reconsideration of Christianity, which was happening in a lot of communities, and the embrace of Judaism that his son would later advocate. Ford's parents intended for him to become a musician. They provided him with private tutors who instructed him in several instruments, particularly the harp, the violin, and the bass. As a young adult, he studied music theory with the Edstone Barnes of London and made in 1899 joined the musical corps of the British Royal Navy, where he served on the HMS Alert. According to some reports, Ford was stationed on the island of Bermuda, where he secured a position as a clerk at the Court of Federal Assize, and he claimed that before coming to America, he was a minister of public works in the Republic of Liberia, where many ex-slaves and then early Black nationalists attempted to settle many years ago. Rabbi Ford was also a member of the UNIA, the Universal Negro Improvement Association, which was headed by the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. Rabbi Ford's love of the movement, the love of African people, the love of Africa itself was instrumental in his decision to take his many members of his community and immigrate to Ethiopia in between 1929 and 1930. Therefore, he sent back ordination certificates from Ethiopia to our first chief rabbi, Whitworth A. Matthew. Rabbi Ford arrived in Ethiopia in 1930, and he died there in Ethiopia shortly before the Italian invasion of the country of Ethiopia. What does Ethiopia mean? If you look at a map, you will notice that and look at the countries that were colonized. Every country essentially in sub-Saharan Africa had been colonized except Liberia and Ethiopia. Liberia, because it was started by liberated African-American slaves, but Ethiopia had a history that runs back thousands of years, back to biblical times. And so to us, we are Beth Shalom Ben Nezakin Ethiopian Hebrew congregation, because the word Ethiopia implies to us an unconquered spirit. An unconquered spirit. And many spirits of many people, particularly people of African descent, have been conquered. So he joined Marcus Garvey's movement, which he founded in 1917. He joined the New York chapter of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, and within a few years, it had become the largest mass movement of African Americans in the history of this country. And Arnold Ford became the musical director of the UNIA choir. He was a masterful musician, and he actually wrote the anthem for the UNIA, Rise Ethiopia. The song that we still sing to this very day in Chicago. There's a lot more about Rabbi Ford that I could mention, but I want to move on as to talk somewhat and a little bit about our next rabbi, who was our chief rabbi, our first chief rabbi, Wentworth Arthur Matthew. Rabbi Matthew was born June the 23rd, 1892. and he passed in December of 1973. He was born in a West Indian immigrant to New York City, and he was the founder in 1919 of Commandment Keepers of the Living God, a Hebrew Israelite congregation. It was influenced by Pan-Africanism and Black nationalism of Marcus Garvey from Jamaica. Matthew developed his congregation along Jewish lines of observance and the theory that they were returning, Baal Teshuvah, not converts, but returnees to the faith of Judaism, Baal Teshuvah. Many of our teachers, our early teachers, taught that in fact the people that were brought to this country in chains during the Atlantic slave trade, that they had every element of their being stripped from them. Their language, their culture, their faith, all gone, all stripped. And they were then given or introduced to a faith of their enslavers. How can the enslaver, in fact, give you a faith that is going to save you? But that's not to say anything about my brothers and sisters that are part of the Christian world. God bless them. But for us, we did not envision the same individuals that looked like the people that enslaved us as giving us a road or a path to salvation and to redemption. We wanted to return, to reclaim. And that's why we don't necessarily call it conversion, but more reversion. We are returners to the faith, or Baal Teshuvah. So going back to Rabbi Matthew for a second, Rabbi Matthew began in 1930. There he founded the Israelite Rabbinical Academy, teaching and ordaining African-American rabbis. His theory of Black Hebrews was generally not accepted in that period by Ashkenazi American Jews of the Orthodox and the conservative movements. He was purported to have been born in Lagos, Nigeria, but I think that he was probably born in St. Kitts in British West Indies, and he and his family became naturalized citizens in later years. Rabbi Matthew sometimes said that he came from Lagos, but in 1927, in his petition for naturalization, Rabbi Matthews listed his place of birth as Spooner's Village in the West Indies. When he registered in 1942 with the U.S. Selective Service during World War II, he listed his place of birth as St. Christopher, British West Indies. Rabbi Matthews immigrated to New York and arranged for his family to join him. And in 1919, he founded Commandment Keepers Congregation of the Living God in Harlem, a Hebrew movement. And I'll say this about our name, because sometimes we refer to ourselves as Israelites. If you are a student of your Torah, you will notice that the people of Israel were called Am Yisrael, B'nai Yisrael, Beit Yisrael. Those were the names that are associated in the Torah. And so when we use the name that identifies us as Israelites, we are B'nai Yisrael, the children of Israel, the children of Israel. This does not exclude any other ethnicity from being attached or part of the people of Israel. But it says for us that we affirm that we are B'nai Yisrael. But how do we affirm that? That affirming must be done by what, as I mentioned before, is called conversion or reversion, or a process of teshuvah. How does one become? And I think some of the issues that we have with so many groups that identify themselves as Israelites today really comes from this process. They have no process. Many of them are espousing messianic beliefs. We are not messianic. There's no thread of messianism within the context of any of the congregations that I serve as chief rabbi of the International Israelite Board of Rabbis. Rabbi Matthews was a fierce and a dedicated leader, and he dedicated his life to teaching and the uplift of his people. The congregation, after it settled in Harlem, was located at 1 West 123rd Street. Unfortunately, today, the flagship building that our synagogue was located in does not exist as a synagogue anymore. And I'm so sorry that that history has been lost. Rabbi Matthews' congregation followed traditional Jewish law. They were selective in the variations that they followed. Men and women were seated separately. They did have a mekitza. We still have a mekitza today in our synagogue, and in most of the Israelite communities, there is a mekitza. Rabbi Matthews then also ascribed to Orthodox Jewish standards, using an Orthodox prayer book. That's what they used. And laws concerning Shabbat and Kashrut were strictly observed. He incorporated his congregation in 1930. He started in 1919, but they were incorporated in 1930. There he established the Israelite Biblical Academy, where he taught and ordained rabbis in the movement. Rabbi Matthews' teachings are followed today by many African-American Jews who also describe themselves as Black Hebrews or Israelites, which have developed along very different lines. The latter, when I say some of these people, I mention them because many times people get confused, and it's very confusing when people say that they're Israelites or Hebrew Israelites or Black Hebrews. Here's some of the differences between our community, the International Israelite Board of Rabbis, and some of these other communities that identify themselves as Black Hebrews. One, they reject white people altogether. We do not. God created man in his image, and when he created man, he created all men and women in his image. In the image of God created he them, male and female. And so our understanding is that we being made, all of us, in the image of God does not exclude any group, any people, anywhere in this world. As a matter of fact, as I've given some lectures of late on the subject of racism and intolerance, one of the things that I've actually said is it's unfortunate that in our case, many times the police in the various cities throughout this country do not see African-American men and women and Latino ex-people as created in the image of God. How can you kneel on someone that you see being made in the image of God to the point where the life goes out of them? How can you have pictures of thousands of people lynched in the South. And yes, there were even lynchings that took place in some northern cities. We have to understand the history of our country. And I believe that we will never get to a point of true reconciliation until America and the leadership therewith are able to, number one, first apologize for the institution of slavery, the institution of Jim Crow, the institution of lynching, and that's the government's responsibility. Because what Martin Luther King marched for was to show that the laws that were existing in the South at that time were not appropriate. They were not lawful. They were not right. And therefore, he demonstrated through his protests that the illegality of what the law of the land was in many parts of the South and in some parts of the North as well. And he was willing to go to jail to say that this law is not lawful. This law is unjust. And many African Americans, many Jews, many Christians participated and worked with Dr. King. And so one of the other lectures that I give is with Rabbi Heschel's daughter, Dr. Shoshana Heschel. And we do some lecturing together around the country and talk about what used to be and how can we recapture that relationship between the African American and the Jewish community today. And I think that many Jewish organizations, many Jewish institutions are seeking paths to creating pathways for joining together, joining forces together, working together. And I think that there's a role that we need to play. And by we, I mean Jews of color, Jews of African descent, must be included in these processes. Because I always find it interesting that many times there's a Black Jewish dialogue in a city, but they don't invite Black Jews from that city to the dialogue between Blacks and Jews. I'm just simply saying, I think that we, the African American Jewish community, the Jews of African descent, or the Jews of color, however one defines themselves, need to be included and invited to many of these conversations that are going on and have been going on ever since last summer when we all witnessed the murder of George Floyd. Rabbi Matthew was rejected twice to become a member of the New York Board of Rabbis. And he did not satisfy their rules of Jewish descent or conversion by recognized Orthodox or conservative bet dins, Jewish courts. They resisted his introducing African, Caribbean, or African American practices into Jewish worship. According to a 2002 article by Rabbi Shlomo ben Levi, also a member of the International Israelite Board of Rabbis, after Matthew's death in 1973, there was little connection between Black Jews and white congregations in New York and elsewhere. Today, I am happy to say that that does not hold true in most of the country, in New York City, in Philadelphia, and Georgia, in Atlanta, Georgia, and in Chicago, that there are interpersonal relationships between the Ashkenazi Jewish community, Sephardi Jewish community, and the Jewish community of African descent, or the Jews of color. The rabbis ordained by the Israelite Academy, which is located in Brooklyn, has become grown spiritual leaders in numerous cities. I am a graduate and an ordainee of my rabbi, Chief Rabbi Levi Ben Levi, who's a spiritual leader of the community Beth Shalom in Brooklyn, New York, continuing in the tradition of Commandment Keepers Congregation. I was ordained in 1985, and I started as the assistant rabbi at Beth Shalom Ben Nizak and Ethiopian Hebrew Congregation in Chicago, which I'm now the spiritual leader of. Our congregation tends to be one of the largest congregations and the most diverse congregations in the Jewish world. Absolutely in the Jewish world. I want to talk a little bit now, moving from Chief Rabbi Wentworth A. Matthew to my teacher, Chief Rabbi Levi Ben Levi. Levi Ben Levi, Rabbi Levi was a builder on many fronts, on many levels, a hard worker and a dedicated individual. Rabbi Levi was born in 1935, and he passed away, Shalom Alai, in 1999 at the age of 64 years old. He was ordained by Chief Rabbi Wentworth Arthur Matthew. He was a builder of organizations, and together with many of his colleagues, he provided continuity with the past by preserving the work and the memory of his teacher and our founder, Chief Rabbi Wentworth Arthur Matthew, by combining vision with action. Chief Rabbi Levi helped to define who we were as a people and greatly influenced the direction of our progress. His accomplishments completed part of our foundation. Therefore, an understanding of his life is really necessary to anyone who wants to know and appreciate the history of the Israelite community. This great leader was born February 18th, 1935, to a God-fearing family in Linden, North Carolina. And it was there that he met and married his childhood sweetheart, Deborah Bird, in 1950. He came to New York City after managing a restaurant and attempting a small business. The young Rabbi Levi enrolled in City College in 1957. He took courses at night while working for the Long Island Railroad to support his growing family. At this particular point, however, the hand of fate altered his path when he and a friend and a co-worker, Mr. Arnold Minot, invited him to attend Commandment Keepers Congregation in Harlem, New York. It was there that he met the person who had the most profound effect on his life, in the presence of Chief Rabbi Wentworth A. Matthew. First, Rabbi Levi became a member of the congregation. Then he was invited to join its secret society called the Royal Order of Ethiopian Hebrews, Sons and Daughters of Culture. And after completing his Hebrew studies, his teacher and the mothers of the congregation encouraged him to enter the Ethiopian Hebrew Rabbinical College. He did that in 1960. And through much hard work and sacrifice and challenges, he graduated 6 years later and was ordained by Chief Rabbi Wentworth A. Matthew with great public acclamation in 1967. After he graduated and was ordained, Rabbi Levy knew that he was destined to do some good things, some great things, and he went on to train and equip with the truth to awaken the lost house of Yisrael. With Chief Rabbi Matthew's blessings, Rabbi Levy started his first congregation, which he called Beth Shalom, in his living room of his Queens apartment with only 8 members. For the first few years, as increasing numbers of people wanted to worship with them, they rented halls at various locations before acquiring their first building at 609 Marcy Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. In 1968, Rabbi Levy negotiated an arrangement with the Young Israel of Williamsburg that allowed him to move his congregation into the present home of Beth Shalom Ethiopian Hebrew Congregation at 730 Willoughby Avenue. In 1971, Rabbi Levy, together with Rabbi Yisrael, Rabbi Yohanatan, Rabbi Woods, and Rabbi Paris, all students of Chief Rabbi Matthew, set out to revive their alma mater, the Ethiopian Hebrew Rabbinical College, that was established in 1925. They expanded the curriculum and renamed their college the Israelite Rabbinical Academy, and other rabbis joined their ranks, and eager, dedicated men enrolled as students. As unified organizational bodies emerged, with the was first known as the Israelite Board of Rabbis. Today, as I said, we are the International Israelite Board of Rabbis. We have a congregation that's we started in Barbados, where Rabbi Levy went in, I think it was 1973, to install a rabbi there. And so that's when we became international. And later on, as we had congregations that joined our organization, particularly on the continent of Africa, that became a part of the International Israelite Board of Rabbis movement. But Rabbi Levy was truly a dedicated servant and an excellent teacher and a strong believer, a man of faith. He also started a newsletter called Hakol, which he did and ran for many years. And he appeared on several programs, such as Black Pride. And he also appeared on Good Morning America some years ago. And he spoke with audiences internationally. And so he, in fact, was my teacher and the individual that ordained me. So I'm going to try to get and touch a little bit on Africa, because I think it's important for us to share with the audience today what's going on, particularly in Africa. I first went to Uganda in 2008. My wife, Rabbi Miriam Funnye, and myself traveled to Uganda along with one of the young women from Nigeria, Chizabere Wazuzu. We left Mbale, Uganda, for the home of the Abu Yudea Jews, and we went out and flew out of Entebbe airport. We were there in 2008 because Rabbi Gershom Samuzu was ordained in the United States. He went to the Ziegler Institute located in California, Los Angeles, California. And after his ordination, the dean of the institution and several other rabbis and myself, we all went to Uganda. And while we were there, Rabbi Gershom had been working and teaching roughly 250 people. And the 10 rabbis that were there broke up into groups of 3. And we started interviewing groups of people, and we took several days. And then we took them all to the mikvah and had Hatafat Dambrit done with the men. And it was a wonderful occasion. And in Uganda, we held a meeting with African Jews from Kenya, Uganda, Nigeria, South Africa, and Ghana. And we then established this network of Jews of African descent in Uganda. And I think it was covered by a magazine. The actual work that we did was in fact covered by a magazine. But there are Rabbi Gershom's community also started in 1918. I mentioned 1918 at the beginning of my talk. It was a watershed year. There was something happening. There was something afloat and I feel just in the universe. These folks, there were no phones in Uganda. There was no internet in Uganda. But when the leader of Gershom's people was given the opportunity, he was given a Christian Bible because they were trying to convert him to Christianity. And he read the Bible. And as he read the Bible, he said, one part makes a sense and the other part doesn't make sense. And he tore the Bible, stopping at the Old Testament. He tore the New Testament out and gave it back. He took it back to the nun or the father, the priest who gave it to him, says, we can't use that. This is who we want to be. And he was already a man in his 70s, but he circumcised himself and all of his people. Sounded like Abraham to me. I mean, Abraham Avinu, Abraham our father. And they became practitioners of the faith of Judaism ever since. They never professed to be descendants of the Israelite people, but they simply converted to the Jewish faith. In Nigeria, it was a little different. Judaism started in Nigeria, coincidentally, in 1918. Uganda is on one end of the continent in the east. Nigeria is all the way over 3,000, 4,000 miles away in Western Africa. And yet this Ruach, this spirit, was moving there. And there was an awakening. We also have communities in South Africa and Zimbabwe. In South Africa and Zimbabwe, we have the Limba community. And I haven't been to South Africa since probably 2015, but I am sending a young assistant there as this COVID piece winds down. He'll be traveling to South Africa, I believe the second week or the first week in May, back to South Africa to teach. And he'll be there, Rabbi Joshua Salter will be there for approximately 3 months, teaching all over the country of South Africa and making a few trips to Zimbabwe as well. Then from South Africa, we have communities that we're working with in Ghana and Cameroon. What I find most interesting is that I've been contacted and some of my people said, well, we have these rabbis coming from Israel and they are talking to us about converting. and they're actually, the rabbis are from the rabbinut, they're Orthodox. And I find that very striking and very interesting because it also is happening in Uganda. Rabbi Gershom is conservative, and now, you know, there's an Orthodox community in Uganda that's a breakaway group from Rabbi Gershom's congregation. Go figure. You know, 3 Jews, 4 opinions. And it's just what it is. But we want to work, and we want the assistance of our Jewish brothers and sisters to go into Africa, to travel with us, and to be and help teach and spend some time. I have nothing against the Orthodox community, but I don't know that you need to wear a beaver hat walking around in the middle of Nigeria or Uganda. I don't know how knickers would fit and patent leather shoes. I don't understand, you know, that the look that they want to establish as quote unquote the Jewish look. I have a Jewish look. Rabbi Randy has a Jewish look. Rabbi Talvi has a Jewish look. The Jewish look is whatever the Jew you're looking at looks like. Okay? So you just don't, oh, we know he's Jewish because he got a black hat on. As a matter of fact, when I first went to Africa, to Nigeria in 2001, I saw some Africans, Nigerians, and they had on black hats and black garments. And I said, what is that? And they said, we're Orthodox. I said, what? We're Orthodox. And I said, well, okay. You want to be Orthodox, but I don't think you are Orthodox right now. But there they are, there they were. We need to work to unite the Jewish people throughout the world. We need to really stand for what we say we profess. Am Yisrael Chai. Am Yisrael Chai. The people of Israel live, and they live within every country almost on this planet. And as they live, we need to be reaching out to them, not rejecting them. We need to be not pushing away, but drawing in. And I believe that this was the best thing to do that Israel could do, that the state of Israel could do. Because I believe that the more support they have, the more diversity that they have of Jews around the world, the stronger Israel can be as a country. Yeah, you got a lot of weapon technology, but you're going to need people. And more than what we claim the Jewish community is in the world today, some between 13 and 15 million people. Lastly, I want to say before we break the questions, is the Jews of African descent, the Israelite Board of Rabbis, we're not Ashkenazi. We're not attempting to be. We're not Sephardi. We're not attempting to be. We're not Yemeni. We're not Mizrahi. We are B'nai Yisrael. We are Jews of West African descent. And we respect all of our co-religionists, from the Orthodox to the Reform, to the Conservative, to the Reconstructionists, to the New Age movement, the spirituality, everybody. And so all we want to do, want to be, is first of all respected as your co-religionist. And when some person that looks like me wanders into your synagogue or your shul, and they know how to hold a siddur, the prayer book, and they happen to put their tallis on the right side up, and then they're reading some Hebrew, it's not a good thing to go up and ask that person, are you Jewish? That's not the thing to ask. I'll never forget my trip to Barcelona, Spain. And I went into a synagogue, me and Dr. Ephraim Isaac. We were part of the World Religious Organization. And when we walked in the door of the synagogue in Barcelona, Spain, with armed guards outside, the sexton came up to us and said, oh, Shabbat Shalom. Are you a Kohen? Are you a Levi or Yisrael? Wow. Not are you Jewish? Because we got past those guards to daven with them. And I like to tell people that that is the most welcome that I've ever felt in any synagogue in the world. Are you a Kohen? Are you a Levi or Yisrael? He said, well, if you black, you can't be no Kohen because those are Ashkenaz. No. They understood. So with that, Rabbi Randy, I don't know if we have any questions in the chat.
First of all, Rabbi Funnye, Yasher Koach, thank you. Brilliant and enlightening. And I'm just thrilled that we've been able to learn with you for this past hour. And it's an honor to be not only in the presence of you, who a colleague and a friend, but of a chief rabbi. Really, thank you so much. I am going to ask if people want to put questions in the chat. We've got about almost 70 people, so it would be a little bit, unfortunately, difficult to have people sort of unmute themselves and ask. But if you want to put a question in the chat, I'd be glad to read the question to Rabbi Funnye and let him address the questions. I want to really just say something that I forgot to say in introducing you, which is, and Rabbi Funnye knows this, and I'm a Chicagoan originally, I know a bit about the city of Chicago. And when I heard that Rabbi Funnye's synagogue, all the way back when I met him 20 years ago, was in Marquette Park, it rang quite a bell to me as a person from Chicago and as a Jew from Chicago. Because what I know about Marquette Park is that Marquette Park was, for many, many, many decades, a hotbed of Nazi and Ku Klux Klan activity in the city of Chicago. And in fact, Dr. King led a march through Marquette Park. One of the first things he did in the North, because of the racism that was so prevalent in Marquette Park. And to know, and now having been personally at your synagogue, to know that there is a Jewish and Black nationalist and Jewish synagogue in the heart of Marquette Park gives me hope. Gives me hope that we can overcome hatred. And I guess my question off the bat is, what do you have to, I clearly, that history as well as I do. Has that been part of your story as a synagogue as well, the location?
Not only that, it's been a part of our story, but let me tell you, the rabbi who built the congregation, his name was Schultz. Rabbi Schultz, when Martin Luther King was organizing the march in Marquette Park, he offered, against his board members' wishes, the synagogue to be a safe haven for Dr. King in case they needed it. Dr. King, the march only got a block and a half. He was attacked so viciously that he had to be ushered out of the neighborhood. He got from 63rd to maybe 64th Street, one block. And he was pelted with brick after brick after brick, and they had to get him out. The amazing thing is that Rabbi Schultz offered the synagogue as a safe haven for Dr. King. On the other side of Marquette Park on 71st and California was the headquarters for the American Nazi Party. You talk about courageous, that was courageous. And another rabbi that I know recently passed, Rabbi Robert Marks, was a part of that march. And Rabbi Marks, I mean, a part of why he started the Jewish Council on Urban Affairs was to fight for civil rights of Black folks. And he was the head rabbi for the reform movement in the Midwest, in the Chicago area. And he kind of lost that job because of his stand for justice, for his stand for equal rights, for his stand against racism. And it was powerful. And he was a powerful man. I'm just, so yeah, that's the history, a part of the history of the community. And people today, they will call and say, are you Black? Yes, yes. And you're in Marquette Park? So the reputation of that neighborhood still carries on to this very day.
Let me, there's a number of questions already. I saw one earlier. So this question is from Marcia Marsh from CRC, says, I am curious about the Royal Secret Society the rabbi alluded to. Can he say a little bit more about what that was and if it still exists?
Well, it's a secret, but yes, it does still exist. It's a Masonic lodge. It's a Masonic lodge and a lodge of Eastern Stars. But yes, it does still exist. But yes, it does exist to this very day.
Thank you. Another question, this is from Sarah Skranka, another friend of CRC, member of CRC. And this is a great question, asking if, she says she's curious if there is a common liturgy amongst the congregations that make up the movement of Jews of African descent.
That we're working towards putting our own prayer book together. A young man has done a prayer book for the evening Shabbat services. We're reviewing it right now, but we're now working on doing a siddur for Shabbat and weekday, and then as well as that would include the Maxor for the holy seasons.
One of the things
What
that
we
I
use,
go ahead.
so there are different prayer books. So one congregation, I believe, uses the Sandapool, the Sephardic Siddur. We use the Art Scroll Siddur and various versions of that. And most of the prayer books that are used in our community tend to be Orthodox prayer books.
I was going to say, you know, and I've only been to your synagogue one time, but it left quite an impression. What I was, what impressed me was, I guess what I would say is the diversity of styles that you were using the Art Scroll Siddur, which is, you know, kind of an Orthodox movement siddur. There were elements, and there was a mechitza, but there were elements of, you know, what I would call sort of mainstream conservative Judaism to me. There were elements that were more sort of liberal, even kind of Jewish renewal with some English chanting merged with the Hebrew, and then some things that I think were just very much part of a cultural milieu in terms of Black America and Black religiosity, and the combination was really wonderful. I'm somebody who really enjoys sort of diversity and fluidity and not being boxed in, and it felt at your place like you were able to encompass a lot of different styles of Jewish worship.
and I believe strong. We're an eclectic congregation.
Yes, that's a great word.
When I go someplace and I hear something, I hear a melody chanted. I say, I try to put it in my memory and take that home. If I see something that just moves me, wherever I go, wherever I bring it home, and that's, we have the flexibility. I'm not afraid to change. I'm not afraid to grow. I think it's no more than being a beautiful flower and just adding another bud to who we are.
And I should say that beyond the liturgy, Rabbi Funnye, the congregation was as welcoming as it could be to my group, which was, young teenagers who were embraced, and, everybody wanted to interact. And even though there was a bat mitzvah going on, which obviously was the focus, we all felt very embraced and welcomed and included. And that to me goes beyond liturgy. That's about love and about a spirit of brotherhood and sisterhood. So thank you for that. There's another question here from Karen Flotty, member of CRC, who says, are there texts or sources that Rabbi Funnye can recommend so that we can learn more about the history and teachings of this branch of our family? So you gave us a great sort of start for those of us who maybe don't have a big background. What other things can you recommend that folks sort of study and read?
I would first recommend a book by James Landing, Black Judaism, Story of an American Movement, published in 2000. And he really goes and covers many of the groups, not only our group, the International Israelite Board of Rabbis, but many of the other groups as well, and their organization and their founding. There's also a couple of other works, and if I think of, I'll come back to it. I'm a little older now, so it kind of takes things a minute to come back around. But Landing's book is certainly a book that can be read, and I'm hoping that one of my colleagues will be publishing something soon. Perhaps a couple of them will be publishing something soon, pursuant to and relative to the community.
Wonderful, thank you. And maybe afterwards you could email me some sources and I can get them out to folks. This is a question from James Wallace, James from St. Louis, who is asking about your movement and the Board of Israeli Rabbis, etc., in terms of acceptance in Israel. You've talked a lot about Africa. What about Israel?
Whoa. Israel. Well, let me put it like this. No, we have not had the rabbinate of Israel, who are mainly very Orthodox and do not accept us. However, the Israeli Ethiopians welcome us with open arms. The Kessim of Ethiopia welcome our community with open arms. The rabbis, the Ethiopian rabbis that are in Israel welcome us with open arms and work with us as brothers. But the rabbinate itself, there's got to be some more growing on their part. And they really have to see that they don't have all the answers to Judaism.
Well, certainly, Rabbi Funnye, that is something that your movement and the Reform movement have in common, for sure. So I'll bring something else up about Israel. Somebody is asking a question, and you really did address it about, I think they're talking about some of the groups that call themselves, Hebrew Israelite, that do engage in, they talk about people, I think, in Times Square and on Broadway. And you did address it, and I'll let you, say something further. What I wanted to say is, for people in the CRC community that know that we have become very close with a community called the African Hebrew Israelite of Dimona community, which aren't part of the group of Hebrew Israelites. And it is confusing because a lot of terms are used by very different groups. And
Yes.
some of those groups espouse very different philosophies, but the African Hebrew Israelites of Dimona, who we've become connected to, and some people are members of both our CRC community and the Hebrew Israelite community, and we've visited Dimona, you know, is a whole nother sort of group. So I guess the question is, like, you know, let me go back to what it was about, you know, yeah, the people in Broadway in New York City.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I
Israelite.
see the question.
Right.
Yeah. Listen, please. They have no connection with the International Israelite Board of Rabbis, period. And as a matter of fact, I mean, they probably dislike me as much as they dislike any Ashkenazi Jew. I mean, that's just who they are. We cannot be the ministers of hate. We cannot be the ministers of intolerance. We cannot stoop ever to saying that anyone in the world is beneath us. We, as I said before, I see every person as created in the image of God. And I mean that. And so we don't grow from hate. We grow from love. We grow from acceptance. We grow from trying to acquire an understanding about others. And that's about going into their communities and worshiping with them and getting an understanding. So we worship with a lot of congregations here in Chicago. And it's wonderful because sometimes their cantor will come and will do a rendition, and then they'll break out and they'll do one of our songs, and they'll put their own melody to it. I mean, we have a cantor, his name is Stuart Simon, and he just say, whenever they have a concert, says, hey, you got to guys come and do something in this concert. You got to do that. So there's a lot of flow and exchange, and that's how I grow. That's how I flourish. You know, I don't want people saying, oh boy, Rabbi, you got anything new? I want to have something fresh. I want the sermon to be fresh. I want the music to be fresh. And I certainly want the food to be fresh so that they'll stay for dinner.
Perfect.
Somebody had mentioned my good friend Bruce Hayes from out in California, and that is a new book that I'm reading. Yeah, The Soul of Judaism: Jews of African Descent in America. He's a good writer, and I would recommend his book as well.
Thank you. That's a new book, Rabbi?
Yes. I think it just came out a couple of months ago.
Great. The question, you know, you mentioned in your biography about, you know, about diverse communities, and, you know, certainly, you know, Dr. King was known for saying, you know, the most segregated hour in America is, you know, Sunday morning, and you addressed it about, you know, about acceptance and love. But do you have anything else you'd want to say in terms of, you know, how do we make sure that all of our religious communities, Jewish and otherwise, reflect the diversity that we hope for, racial diversity especially, but other diversity as well? You know, what wisdom do you have when it comes to, not, you know, your community is clearly flourishing in that way, but others that are, you know, that are represented here on this screen? What advice can you give us to try to make our communities as diverse as possible?
I believe in the city of Chicago, we were the first Jewish congregation. Now, there have been many others that have followed, but we were the first Jewish congregation to open the doors to our Muslim brothers during Ramadan. And I'm talking about Muslims from the Middle East. I'm talking about Muslims from Egypt. And they came in and they they do a prayer called the iftar prayer before they break the fast of Ramadan. And after they prayed, we broke the fast together. Then we exchanged understanding. Why do you do this? Why do you do that? What's going on here? What's going on there? Why do you face this way and we face that way? Okay, because it kind of turned the angle that Muslims face is a little northwest, east west or something like that, east north. And so we are deweys, when we stand and pray, to be open, to be welcoming. And I mean, come on, you and Rabbi Talvi, come on. I mean, Central Synagogue is one of those places that if I didn't live in Chicago, I could be a member of your synagogue.
You're an honorary member, that's for sure.
Welcome, your synagogue is. And so, and I deeply appreciate it. And I think Joshua Nelson feels the same way. I mean, he enjoyed himself. He just rocked.
We loved it. Believe it or not, that was 2006.
Wow.
Yeah, time does fly.
It does.
Rabbi, there's a question actually, that's uniquely suited for the moment we're in terms of the pandemic. And this is actually from a person who's from another community. A Reconstructionist synagogue in New York. And this person, Vicky, is actually the president. So Yasher Koach on your presidency. And she's asking a question that about 2 years ago, nobody would have thought to ask. But is it possible for people to watch your services via, internet, via Zoom? Or are your services online these days?
They're online. They're Zoom and they're on Facebook. And if they contact us at www.bethshalombz.org. That's www.bethshalombz.org. You can get all the information about joining the services on Shabbat, and all are welcome. At one point, at the height of a pandemic, we were averaging over 500 viewers each Shabbat. I mean, who would have? Yeah. The number's down now because it's opening up and the weather's warmer. But we're a congregation. If everybody comes out, we got 250 folks. So many weeks we doubled the membership of the congregation. And we had people that are part of other communities that literally joined our community.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's amazing how this time of challenge, and we have to acknowledge that there's been many serious and difficult challenges, and obviously loss of life and illness, but has also created opportunities, especially connection. Like you said, you're not traveling these days, so we could never have had you present to us if it wasn't for this technology that really we're all just, most of us. I know a few people who knew about Zoom before COVID. I wasn't one of them.
I wasn't either.
So, Rabbi, just a couple more questions, but this has just been fascinating and wonderful, and I really appreciate your time. Someone, you did start off your presentation by talking about the role of women and acknowledging the women who are, sort of so important in the movement. Somebody is asking about ordination of women in terms of your movement.
Yes, that was a part of my platform as I was seeking the office of Chief Rabbi. And I can promise that we will get a woman ordained very soon to our board. And we have a couple of women. She actually finished some years ago. And I've been trying to get the consensus for the ordination of women, and we have to get there. We must get there, and it's going to be done because, again, I'm an egalitarian. And as an egalitarian, okay, I'll whisper this. My wife is way smarter than me, okay? And as such, she has no desire to be a rabbi. But for those women that do in our community, I think that we are actually not fulfilling our fullest potential when we don't include women as a part of our rabbinate. I think that we're letting talent go to waste, and that's my opinion. And that's where we want to move to.
And I will say this: I mean, terminology gets there, is never precise. When you talk about, again, because I had the benefit of and the privilege and the honor of tending your synagogue, when you say mechitza, it is one of those mechitzas that is down the middle. There's no, and everybody has a view of the bima.
Yes.
The women sit on one side and the men sit on the other, but there's no hierarchy of seating.
No. Not only that, but we also include women are entitled to every privilege that men are within the construct of the synagogue. As a matter of fact, we just held elections recently, and the president and the vice president are both young women. And I say, Baruch Hashem. I think we were probably one of the first African-American congregations to elect a woman as president of our congregation, dating back to like the 1990s, maybe 94, 95. So again, equality, I want equality for everyone. And I know some people feel that there are different roles for women, but I don't see any role that is performed in the rabbinate today that a woman cannot fulfill and do a job well. And there are women that have been ordained in the modern Orthodox movement, the conservative movement, the reform movement. The reform movement was first. And well, actually, Jonas was ordained Orthodox, wasn't she, in Germany?
I think so. My understanding of the modern sort of, in terms of the women in the rabbinate, I always thought it was well, no. I think that maybe there were the Reconstructionist movement just before the Reform movement, but certainly.
Valley Priestland was first, 1972. But you're right about Regina Jonas. She was really the first woman that was ordained and served. And it was the Hochschuler, so I don't know what they considered that. It was the Wissenschaft des Judentums, I'm not sure. I guess there wasn't really much else other than Orthodox
right
at the time, so yeah.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Traditional.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you. No, really.
This was awesome.
Thank you.
What a
Thank
gift.
you very much, Rabbi.
Let me do one more, and then we'll say shalom and lehitraot. And I just want to. This is something that I think is important to one more time sort of emphasize, because you talked about Ethiopian Jews in Israel, Jews who came from Ethiopia, and your relationship, or the movement's relationship with them, but also that your synagogue has the name Ethiopia in its title. And I just think it's important to again kind of create those definitions, because I think Ethiopia is being used in different senses. Yes,
absolutely. But in our sense, it's a spirit that has never been conquered. Even though the Italians invaded the country and held it onto it for about 5 or 6 years, the Ethiopian people, the Ethiopian culture, was never absorbed and never migrated to the Italian culture, as you see in Ghana, as you see in Nigeria, where the influence of the British in their court system is really, you know, you got these black guys walking around in white wig robes. Come on, you know, but that's what they do because, you know, that's what they learned. That's what they learned from the British. And so, but in Ethiopia, you don't have that. So the influences, you do not have the colonial influences on Ethiopia that you have on many of the other countries in sub-Saharan Africa.
I love that. I actually wrote that down, Rabbi Funnye, Ethiopia as a spirit that can never be conquered. And
Yes.
I hope that your community and all communities are able to carry that spirit, to not be conquered and to be able to preach that message of love and understanding and B'Tselem Elohim that you taught so beautifully, that every one of us has created the image of God, and we all, you know, deserve to be able to express ourselves spiritually in the way that is meaningful and purposeful for us. So this has been a true, as Rabbi Susan said, it's been awesome. And thank you for being with us and for teaching us and for leading us. And I know that there are a number of people on this Zoom who already knew about you in your community, but there are others that didn't. And I think all of us now really feel like connected to you because of the words you shared. So Yasher Koach and
Yashikoa, God bless.
Rabbi Randy, Rabbi Talvi, I deeply appreciate the invitation. And, you know, like I said, I felt so welcome when I came to St. Louis. It was fantastic. And as a matter of fact, just to mention his name, may his memory be for a blessing. Gary Tobin told me, you know, boy, you're gonna really like the synagogue, Central Synagogue. I mean, he told me that. He said, you're gonna really like Central Synagogue when you get there. So I deeply, deeply appreciate it and the friendship that we've developed over the years. Thank you so very much. And it's a blessing. Be well.
Lila Tov. Lila Tov. Thank
Lila
you.
Tov.
Lila Tov.
Good night,
Lila Tov.
everybody. Blessings. Everyone stay well and be
Lila
well
Tov, Baruch Hashem.
and take care of each other.
Lila Tov. Thank you.
Baruch Hashem. Baruch
Baruch
Hashem.
Hashem.
Thank you.
Lila Tov, Rabbi. Nice to see you again.
Lila Tov, Congregation of Armenian Land.
Bye, everybody. Thanks, everyone, for joining us.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.